Oh, it's another weekend. I gotta fix my squeaky chair. Pop out the chat. Wait for someone to show up. Anyone? I put like notifications and everything on social media, like everybody told me to. Hey there. Here's some cheese. How evil is this cheese? Starting to warm up in my room already. It's getting to be like 20 degrees Celsius in here. So I better tuck into this cheese quickly. Hey Moist Nurgler. Hey Mark. Hey Moonring, Pale Rider, Aiden, Comic Nut, Adrianeth, Lysander, Phoenix, Moondog, Kilkaio, Gadzooks. How are you all this morning? Or this evening, depending on where you are in the world. I would say it'd be evening for the most of you. Scorch, you're way early. No, I did not see Indestructible's live stream today. However, I did see a news released about the Dark Alliance game that I worked on. Or consulted on, I should say. On the social medias. And the article is so badly written. I don't know who wrote it. But like they refer to like Dungeons and Dragons as like a board game. And the Ryman the Frostmaiden as a mod. I'm like, what? Are you so used to, like, did they feed this into a computer that is used to spitting out articles about computer games? Because they do not know how to write about role-playing games. I have the power. Hey, amigo Roberto. Yes. You're 2 weekend brews into it. Well, once I finish this coffee here, I have a couple of my homebrewed meads ready to go. Wow, it just dumped 2 feet of snow. Well, 'tis the season. Yeah, I know, Scorch. It's crazy. Did I hear about the Dragonlance lawsuit? Dude, where have you been? I posted a link and comment about it on my community tab pretty much as soon as I heard about it. Ted Sakura, he posted about it first, and that's how I heard about it. And then I posted essentially what he posted with, my opinion on it. Dude, yes, I loved the Danish treats. Thank you very much. Those little chocolate wafers, I've been working my way through those. They are so like chocolatey, they make me break out in a sweat, those things. The licorice pipes were very nice, and that soft drink that you gave me was very, very similar to New Zealand's L&P. So if you ever come to New Zealand and try L&P, it'll taste almost exactly the same, although ours is a little bit sweeter. Hey, Cormac. Good, thanks. So Danska sent me a box all the way from Denmark with a bunch of snacks and some miniatures. So hopefully I'll be able to paint up those miniatures at some point. Oh, that's okay, Comic. No, that's right. I don't expect everybody to follow everything I do. That'd be crazy. Oh, I haven't had like a big proper breakfast yet, and I'm really, really quite hungry because I haven't had anything since yesterday afternoon. So I'm going to avoid the cheese at the moment because it's just too rich for me. But that was a nice tasting cheese. Hey, Shady Grin. Nice to see you. I've got to catch up on Indestructible Boys stuff. Hey, William Jackson. Oh, yeah. This is Greed Dragon. Special live stream next Saturday? No. Most people are going to be fairly busy for Halloween anyway. Though I do have my my homebrewed monster ready to go for Halloween, as is my tradition. Hey, Josh. Can you describe the flavour in an incredibly pretentious way of the cheese? Well, let's see. It's got hints of Zugtmoy with a deep undertone of Oboxob that leaves your stomach disturbed and confused. It's like enjoying the scent of death on a Sunday morning. And it's cuisine taken to a foul art, really. Halloween's your birthday. Nice. What's on the docket for the next 2 weeks, if you don't mind asking? Well, you can ask. So, I've been producing my my podcasty thing, my broadcasts, which are essentially unscripted audio of me just talking about D&D topics. General game mastering tips, you could say. Last one that I did, though, I was reading directly from this hefty Codex of Infinite Planes in regards to the plane of fairy. I wasn't reading everything in there. I was just reading the sort of prose, the text talking about what the plane of fairy is, but none of the details of specific monsters and stuff that they put in there, or character class options, or magical items and things. Greetings from Georgia. Greetings. The time of Samhain approaches, yeah. As for other things on, well, I've got some. I'm still working on the sculptures. They're coming along nicely, although I'm not entirely happy with the way I've done Roper's face. I think I might have truncated his moustache area a little bit. I'm not going to show you at the moment because he looks kind of hideous because his face is stripped back to like the skeleton. Because I do the teeth and stuff working on my way out. Normally, actually, I would do the jaws and stuff separately, and I would insert them in there after they've been baked and stuff. Thanks, Adrianeth. Tossing my coin early. Can't wait to see the video of the new critter. Halloween homebrew is always fun. Thanks, Gearcast Duke. Found a great toy store today. Had some D&D stuff tucked away. Found an old adventure. I'd heard of Vault of the Drow. Says Gen Con. I don't know what that Roman numeral means. Tawny module. Yeah, that was a long time ago. Yeah, thanks for reminding me also that it's a monetized live stream. We're funding a new chair that doesn't squeak. Hey, Dennis, thanks. Name for a crazed mage. Here's the thing. I had delivered not so long ago some special dice, which are, if I just get all this crap out of here, consonant and vowel dice. This is the little vowel dice here, and these ones basically produce letters for you. So let's give it a go. Rel, Vil, Pud. Relvil Pud. That's a good name for a crazy wizard for you. Relvil Pud. I would have a problem with the world if my name was Relvil Pud. Yeah, that's it, Relvil Pud. Hey, Epic Thulu. Tome of Beast 2, any good? It's absolutely fantastic, yes. As you would expect, It's got a bunch of homebrewed stuff from people who sent stuff into Kobold Press as well as their own creations, and it's a big hefty tome. I've got yet to get the physical copy. In fact, I've had a lot of problems getting physical copies of books sent over to the New Zealand, to my collection here, thanks to the world's postal system just suffering from COVID-19 setbacks and stuff, and also the US postal system is in a bit of a disrepair as well, so I can't send out any of the special patron rewards, YouTube membership rewards that I wanted to until that gets sorted out. But once that's all post-election, it should sort itself out a little bit, I think. So we'll get those sent out as well. But as we know, the Drive-Through RPG and DM's Guild books, print-on-demand books, get sent over from the UK, and it's really, really like dodgy. I've had a few books which got sent and just never arrived, and I had to inform them 6 months later, actually, when I noticed, hey, these books didn't arrive, and they said, oh, sorry, and they've sent out some new ones. But they don't include tracking information on any of their postal stuff, which is a problem. I think, if they did that and spent a little bit more on that and just passed the cost on to us as consumers, it would probably solve a lot of their repeat sending books problem. Yeah. So I'm still waiting on that. I have got the Border Kingdoms, though, which I've been reading, and that's really good. It's in the style of the Forgotten Realms campaign guide, where it's less talking about story stuff, and it's just giving you all of the information about the locations across a map. So it's mapping out and describing the entire region, the people that live there, and interesting little tips and tricks and tidbits about each region. The Border Kingdoms is a densely packed area which is on sort of the coast, where the big land rise of the Shah dips down into the Border Kingdoms to be the sort of alluvial plain thing that goes out into the Lake of Steam area, and then it borders into Tethyr and Kalimshan and that stretch of land between the Vilhon Reach and the Lake of Steam. Thanks, Jonathan. What's my favourite hag moonring? Probably just green hags, I think. I use them quite a lot. Jonathan, thank you. My local game store wants me to reward my players for costumes. Aside from inspiration points, what else? Inspiration points are pretty good. Extra healing potions. You can award them a no. No is a concept that my friend Weir came up with in his games. No is essentially where your character goes, no, like Luke Skywalker or whatever, and it's that no, and you leap in and stop something from happening. It's above and beyond an inspiration point because it's a bit where your character actually gets to dictate what happens in the gameplay. So it's like an inspiration point plus. Thanks, Robert. No, it's still there. I just hadn't got to it yet. I'm planning to challenge that uses a Faerun and a Shan, and was wondering if you could give me some pointers on how to roleplay a Shan. So a Shan is a combination of different personalities that have combined and sacrificed their individuality to become a creature which is wholly dedicated to preserving the world of Faerun. They essentially work as secret agents for an alliance of gods, like a semi-pantheon. So Moradin and Lathander and those sort of gods who don't normally work officially together, but they share the same values so much that they've actually banded together and given a secret recipe to these dedicated mages to become the Shan. So they're weird, they're monstrous looking, highly monstrous looking, really scary looking black inky tar things that kind of like look a little bit like mini false hydras. A little bit bipolar, you could say, yeah. They've probably got a dominant personality, which is the spokesman, that will be selected to talk to whoever they need to talk to, but for the most part they are beyond mortal concerns. They'll act to ward off mortals who get too close to areas that are sensitive. Whereas the Faerun will try and draw people in to break wards and blockages that keep them locked away. So they'll try and send psychic images or spread rumors somehow that there's treasures and wonders on the other side of barriers that are keeping them locked away. So unless the player characters actually manage to talk to these scary looking black Shan things, they may actually kill the defenders who are stopping them from doing a very, very bad thing. Yeah, Phoenix, you could do like a reroll, the no being a reroll. See you later, Scorch. Does death change in the Far Realms? Yeah, it can do. Like, there's less. It's more about mind over matter than it is about what the matter is. One of the problems with the Chaoti, for instance, being human artificers from Amaska that travelled over to the Far Realm very, very long ago, is that they become naturalised to the place so that their mind is in such control over their body that it can interrupt biological processes temporarily as they rearrange their body mentally to be different things. So their body becomes morphic. So they essentially become doppelgangers or shapeshifters, and the biology is just sort of secondary to that. When they cross over into the prime material plane, all of a sudden biology takes precedence. They lose that mental control over themselves, and all of a sudden they're stuck in whatever mutant form they were when they crossed over, which can be fatal. So they have to protect themselves. That reminds you of the actually rule. Oh, okay. What do I think of the wolf Weir, opposite of the werewolf? I get a lot of questions about lycanthropes, and frankly, I'm kind of like over answering questions about lycanthropes all the time. There's a lot of different lycanthropes. They follow the same basic template rules, and if you're an animal that turns into a human, you've still got an animal's mentality. So their instincts are animalish rather than humanoid. But you know, hey TJ. I'm not currently DMing a campaign, TJ. What's my favourite melee weapon? Probably an axe or a falchion. I wouldn't say shards are automatically bipolar. No, they've got a different type of mentality. They've been merged together, individuals, so long that they probably operate mostly as one personality. Ichor irritants, nice. Any thoughts on how to make a high-level spellcaster physical lair extra harrowing? It's my first time running past level 12, and I'm still trying to have the lair act as a vault for the mage. Yeah, so use extra dimensional spaces, use monsters that are kept in containers that are too small for them, and make it like they're walking through the TARDIS, you know. Mages, of course, ward and protect things, and they can freeze people in place or slow down time. They can also cause energistic effects to happen, so like things blast and explode and stuff. So you're walking through an area which is essentially trapped with lots of arcane things. They may have things like awakened furniture and stuff like that, which is like their little companion, but is greatly offended by anyone who's not the mage entering the lair. And I don't know about you, but like being attacked by a sentient cigar would like bother me. So yeah. I wouldn't say that, Power Rider. I would say that I just get asked that question a lot. A lot. Yeah, the Far Realm is really creepy and weird. It's not always just sandwiched realities squished together. Quite often the Far Realm is distinct realms that just have differences of the laws of physics. Like, so you could be in a world where gravity is reversed. So you're drawn to spaces of nothingness and then pushed apart when the mass of things that are collected becomes too great. So that could be really weird. Hey, Gage. 2 hours, whoa, yeah, it's going to be a long one. I mean, we're already 20 minutes in. It'll go faster than you think. On that topic, what is your favourite Weir creature? Weir rats, I think. Weir rats would be my favourite. Because I find them the most useful in city campaigns and things like that. Like urban campaigns and sewers and like the upper Underdark, Weir rats are really actually quite useful for storytelling. Weir furniture. I like it. Monsters with stone shape ability hiding in walls, yeah. It's like in a Medusa's lair. They should be able to turn monsters back from stone into, or like, you know, a wizard. So the statue that you see in the wizard's laboratory that looks like a monster, it's probably a monster that they can turn back into an actual monster at any point. Animated floor tiles. I like that. What's my favourite abomination or aberration? I like the Fane, the ones that the shadowy creatures that travel through time for the abominations. I really like those guys. I'm also a huge fan of gibbering mouthers, although they're not aberrations. Everything about the gibbering mouther is really cool. Aberrations. I am a big fan of the Coyote, that's for sure, because they've got real good solid history and a reason for doing the things they do, and they have a vested interest in the prime material plane that makes sense. And of course, you can't go past Mind Flayers, of course. Mind Flayers are fantastic. Everybody's asking me questions about Weir creatures now. Like, okay. If there is an underwater civilization is there an underwater? So there's several underwater civilizations in the Moonsea. They don't call it. Oh, hang on. Moonsea. Where are we? Yeah, because the Moonsea is connected to the Sea of Fallen Stars, so it's just a territory of the Sea of Fallen Stars as far as the people there are concerned. I would have to look it up actually, because it's in the cold regions. So some of the more tropical, temperate-loving species probably wouldn't like the Moonsea very much. But yeah, it'll be part of the wars that go on with those places. Your party's going to be on a boat there for a few days, trying to think of something interesting. Well, sea serpents, certainly. Sahuagin are always a problem. And sea elves and sea trolls and things like that. You know, there's aquatic versions of a lot of different things. Yeah. It's such a large body of water. I'm not sure if it is actually a lake or a sea. It says sea, so it's probably saline, right? Salty. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Apply a template called lycanthrope to whatever creature you want. Fluff, I actually did answer your question on Patreon about that. That was the one where I was talking about Obox Op. That video where they feed on corpses. Hive Brood in the old creature catalogue. I think so. Mimics. Yeah, mimics are basically Weir furniture, right? Thanks, Robert. Hey AJ, Drow Matron Mother got her hands on the Horn of Orcus. What diabolical ritual are they striving to complete as the barriers between the planes begin to weaken? Love the words always. So she could be trying to... she may have a vested interest in an alliance with a monstrous race that gives them something in return. So, for instance, if she's in alliance with Mind Flayers, which quite often feature as a prominent race that are allied with the Drow in some ways, standoffishly, she could be weakening a temporal barrier that would allow the Mind Flayers to bring in additional forces from beyond space and time. That could have disastrous consequences long term. She could be trying to return or trap or otherwise use that magic to control demonic forces, which has been a feature of the Drow. Well, back when the Drow were back on the surface world, there was a lot of demon summoning amongst the elves at the time. So that may be something that she's trying to do. She could also be trying to use that energy to bypass very potent magic. So she's essentially trying to skip past the dimension where that magical barrier is to get at a tome of knowledge that could be locked away. So she could be trying to unveil a ritual that summons Lolth or opens up planar barriers that keep Lolth from a domain that Lolth is trying to take over. So it could be seen as some sort of divine service that she's performing. But of course, any divine service to Lolth is also self-service because Lolth will reward you with extra power. Thanks, Morgan. A noble with a Medusa wife. Possible. I mean, Medusa are a playable character race in 4th edition, 3.5? 4th edition for sure. So the like the male Medusa, I don't think had snake hair, for instance. Yeah. It's interesting, really, because Dungeons and Dragons treats Medusa as a race of monsters, whereas mythologically speaking, it was a curse done to an individual named Medusa, and she had 2 other sisters who were, and they were collectively called the Gorgons, right? But a Gorgon, of course, is a big metal bull thing from that turns you to stone in Dungeons and Dragons. So there's a point where the mythology breaks down and it just becomes Dungeons and Dragons IP. Weir cheese. Interesting. What's my favorite dragon type? Traditional dragons, metallic dragons, I would say, are my favorite dragons. Like if I'm role-playing a dragon and conveying a dragon, gold dragons are really cool because you get to basically talk as the DM if you're a gold dragon. Silver dragons are really cool because they're authoritarian, but also they sort of expect you to fall into line with their purpose. They're kind of hard-headed. Copper dragons are funny and fun and sort of slapstick comedians, but they have a heart of gold and they feel really compelled by people's plights and stuff, so they actually try and help people. Bronze dragons will be very interested in your family history, and they'll regale you with stories of battles from long ago, and like, you don't remember the battle that ended the Amaska Empire? Really? It wasn't that long ago. And you know, they'll talk about it, and then they'll bring out some like shield or something like that from their collection and say, well, this was owned by your ancestor who was there. Actually, you should probably have this, and they'll pass you off this magical item. Stone cold gorgeous. How could I forget the Ixodar Chittles, Moonring? You can't get the first episode of the Sigil campaign. Did we have a first episode? I think we actually launched straight into the second episode. It might not have been recorded. I'm not entirely sure. Whoa! Turns out my chat was frozen. Weir Man Bear Pig. Nice. Bronze dragons are your favourite? Hey Demon Inquisition, welcome. Gage, thank you. What would a green dragon, gold dragon hybrid ruler be like? Oh, terrible. So the thing with gold dragons is dreams, right? They've got an ability to alter reality like they're a Zen monk that's like dreaming reality around you. So everything takes on a sort of a dreamy quality. They can communicate with you via your dreams, and things take on a slightly celestial air around their domain. So you get like feather fall if you fall out off a cliff and things like that. Creatures are sort of airy and happy and dreamy. It turns a place into a sleepy sort of Zen garden. They're contemplative. Green dragons are secretive, capricious, greedy, covetous, and they watch from a distance and manipulate from a distance. So you're talking about a dragon which will step into your dreams and twist every view of your reality. So you will dream constantly about something happening, and then the dragon may orchestrate something like that actually happening in reality. So you may have a large town of people believing that their dreams come true and they're responsible for reality changing around them, when in actual fact it's dragons doing it. So the dragon may orchestrate something to happen in their dreams, and the townsfolk will be so convinced that that thing must happen because they've been dreaming stuff that happens, that they will actually go out and do it, no matter what that is. So they may believe that they're being communicated to by a god. 3.5 was the best edition to date, was it though? So 3.5 edition was, I think, with the Open D20 license, so that people, it was the first time they sort of opened up the rules and gave access to everybody so they could create their own third-party products, settings and stuff based on this codified set of rules. So at the time, people thought, oh wow, well this is, D&D has reached its final form, and we've got this template now that we can use to build any sort of game. And they built D20 Modern and various other world settings and stuff from it. So a lot of the stuff that we've seen now. Pathfinder, of course, stemmed from that as well. Pathfinder became the alternative to Dungeons and Dragons when 3.5 shifted to 4th edition, with a drastic departure aimed at trying to fix a lot of the issues between the different classes and balancing the rules and things like that, but it missed the mark, I think, with 4th edition. It was a fun game to play, and it was really easy to get people introduced to it. Meanwhile, a lot of those properties that had the 3.5 edition rule set as their base became the competition to 3.5, and people were looking to alternatives, and that's why Pathfinder gained a lot of prominence, and that's why they call it 3.75 rule set of Pathfinder, because it's based so much on 3.5 edition. It is Dungeons and Dragons, just taken so that, like, imagining that 4th edition never happened, and they just carried on developing 3.5 and trying to fix it and add extra details and stuff, and they came up with their own world setting and supplements and things for it. So for a large chunk of time there, Paizo was actually taking a big chunk of the D&D market share, and yeah, they did very well with it. So I like to think that they sort of were custodians of the hobby for a time there, when Wizards of the Coast really dropped the ball on that one. And then we got the era of 5th edition, where they started releasing a playtest packages, got a lot of feedback from people about what was the essential elements of the game that needed to be there, but they didn't make any assumptions and just sort of said, okay, everything's on the table for being removed or staying in the game, and we need feedback from you, the people who have practical experience of playing this game. What actually is Dungeons and Dragons? What does it need to be? Don't make any assumptions about something just because it's always been there that it has to be there, like encumbrance rules and alignment and that sort of thing. So they chopped it up into different chunks and said, okay, well, this spell has to be there. Magic Missile is iconic to Dungeons and Dragons. We can't have Dungeons and Dragons without Magic Missile. So that's tick. That's it. So that's what D&D Next was. It was an era of playtesting the game. Meanwhile, Pathfinder carried on and continued. It didn't see any reason to come up with a 2nd edition. It was releasing products on a regular slot, and everyone was quite happy with it. But people started to filter over and get more and more curious about this feedback and interaction with Wizards of the Coast, who seemed to finally be listening to what people wanted the game to be. The other fundamental thing that 5th edition did was it fixed the power problem with Dungeons and Dragons, wherein things had deviated too far away from the core stats of the character sheet, and gone too much down the simulationist sort of feel, and that idea that things had to get progressively worse as they went up in level, and it got out of sync with different character classes and different levels and things like that. So 4th edition was a prime example of how that was out of whack, because you had low-level kobolds and high-level kobolds, and the two didn't interact in the world. So you didn't encounter the low-level kobolds coexisting with the high-level kobolds as a player character, they just disappeared off the map as you got higher up in level. So the entire world sort of changed, and somehow the lore of the game was supposed to navigate that, and it became a shit show. So that was broken. 5th edition reduced it back down to bounded accuracy. So things can only have so much armor class, things can only have so stats that are so high and things like that, and everything relates back to those stats. Your saving throws, you don't have a lot of increase basically in your skill level and things like that. As you go up in level, you have a proficiency bonus which is added onto it as you gain in experience and stuff, and magic items really make a huge difference to the game balance. So if you hand out a lot of magic items to your characters right from the get-go, you're going to have problems with game balance. Your CR, for instance, is based on a bunch of adventurers who have rests at a certain rate. And if you give them more long and short rests than like 1 per day or something like that, CR suddenly doesn't mean anything, because the very basis of CR is based on a specific way of playing the game with a specific makeup of characters, that if you deviate from that, CR doesn't mean anything anymore. So that's kind of interesting. But anyway, I hope that answers a lot of that question. I've sort of forgotten what that question was. William, thank you. I'm running my first D&D game. Really? That's amazing news. Great. No, elves are not the main theme. Yeah, that's what I would have assumed. A home-brewed classic movie monsters as races. Last minute wisdom can you impart would be appreciated. Never DM'd before. First of all, you're going to do fantastic. You've got the mindset for it. I would say just sort of the main important thing when you first start playing the game is don't overload the players with your background information that you've developed for the game. Just give them what their characters see in the here and now, and things that, like, if they ask questions, answer those questions, but don't go overboard on it. So dial your ego back and let them discover the world. Don't present it to them. They need to sniff and pull and uncover things, and then you reveal it bit by bit. So give them the mystery of the world that their characters are in. Let their character development also influence your game world as well. So be prepared to put whole organizations and families and alliances and products and things like that into the game based on their characters' build. So the world building is not complete until the player characters have actually touched the campaign. Boy, that's a good quote. World building is never complete until the players are involved. Anyway, so I hope that, but otherwise just relax, have fun, let your guard down, play characters that you give them voices and things like that, and just and also stop talking frequently and let the players just talk amongst themselves. And when when the players turn to you and ask questions, that's when you carry on talking. Yeah, give them plenty of opportunity to talk and get to know each other. Real life games, as opposed to broadcast games, are quite often just long conversations with players talking to each other and people distracted and stuff. Real life games quite often take a long time to play. What's the difference between a witch and a hag? A witch is a practitioner of sorcery and mystical arts. Mainly, a witch is like a warlock quite often in Dungeons and Dragons context, and a hag is a supernatural creature. So it's a creature that was originally native and are quite often native to the Feywild. So it's a storyified monster that has a humanoid form, but is in actual fact like a shape-shifting predator. Yeah. Thaco's your jam. Oh, okay. The first 3 sessions of Sigil are Patreon exclusives. Oh, I'd forgotten. It's so long ago. Yeah, so you do actually have exclusive access to stuff on Patreon. Yeah. Maybe I should release those for the public. It's been so long, though. Comics Nut, thank you. For my Halloween costume, Halloween game, I was going to have a Leatherface clone team up with a Sledge. Any tips? No, it sounds like you got it covered. That sounds fantastic. You could have it so that the Sledge is borrowing people's skins, and the bad guy is like a serial killer who takes on the appearance of somebody else. So he's like a slim Jack the Ripper type, and the Sledge actually borrows the faces of other people in the community. So he's constantly, he's like, it was the mayor. It's like, well, the mayor, his body, which has got no skin on it, died several days ago. So how did he kill somebody? Like, this doesn't make any sense. That's good. That's a real good murder mystery, that one. Robert, thank you. What would the personalities of aluminium, pewter, lead, electrum, and Nordic gold, false gold, dragons be like? A pyrite gold. Let's see. So pyrite is a form of iron, I believe, or something like that. Let's see. Lead, big, heavy, highly toxic. Pewter is an alloy. Aluminum would be it would be something like electrical, or maybe possibly have a vulnerability to electricity. But essentially, aluminium is interesting because it's got a oxidized outer layer that is highly resistant to anything thrown at it. So you have to melt it in an oxygen-free environment. Personality-wise, aluminium is light and strong. So it's fast, but it's highly durable. So kind of like a mercury dragon, but a little bit not. Tricky. I don't know. I'd have to give it some extensive thought. Frostwolf Pack. That's a great question. Ted Sakura is coming up with the sorcerer class thingy for what's it called? It's in the link down below. I keep forgetting the name of it. Black something. Where's the thingamajiggy? Excuse me for a second. Isn't that typical when you pop into your Facebook, into your YouTube, and the exact like thing that was there a moment ago that you are seeing all the time just suddenly isn't there anymore? So typical. So typical. Oh, that's right. It'll be in my my emails because I'm a backer. So Stargate SG1 and... No, it's disappeared from there. Blackstorm Realms. So Blackstorm Realms is a sci fantasy setting that's kind of like I hate to compare it to a Spelljammer type thing, but it's like a Spelljammer type thing where you go to different worlds and different settings and stuff, and it gives you opportunities for generating new things in a setting where it's like if you don't want to play Spelljammer but you still want to have a cosmic exploration game, that's your bag. That's the sort of thing that you go for, where there's a threat to the overall galaxy. That's another thing too. In Spelljammer, there is actually, particularly in the Astromundi cluster sourcebook, there is a outside threat. Like there's an empire which is trying to invade the various worlds of D&D, and you can actually play a space battle type oriented game where there's intrigue and things like that, where actual armies and horrible threats are threatening to take over worlds. So it's possible to run a Invasion of the Body Snatchers or a actual Invasion of Faerun type campaign setting, where you combine Spelljammer with Forgotten Realms, and it becomes like the sleepy world which forgot about space travel until all of a sudden space travel is here and they're invading your world, sort of thing. So I quite like that. The Stargate SG1 is essentially Wyvern games using the 5th edition as a template. They've enhanced 5th edition to provide additional types of encounters, which I find really, really interesting, because that would you can use that to enhance all of your games, not just that one setting or that system. So I really love that, and it's Stargate SG-1, so you get to go through Stargates and encounter system lords and all that sort of stuff. So it's the TV show, but you're in charge of the episodes. So that's awesome. I'm really looking forward to it. Okay, back to the chat. Well, don't want to miss any of these super chats. Demon Inquisition, thank you. So, AJ, I took your advice only 2 sessions into my Descent into Avernus campaign, and the players have already accepted help from a polite and mysterious patron named Pazrael. Wink, wink. Excellent. Excellent. I think that deserves some mead. Let's give it a whack. Smells like alcohol. Kids, do try this at home. I mean, in the company of your parents or other legal guardians, who should always be the people that give you your first taste of alcohol. Ooh. Oh, that's a very dry one. Not sweet at all, which means that it will be pure alcohol. Axe Beaks, that's a good one, Ed. Yeah, I could come up with a video on Axe Beaks for sure. Yeah, there's lots of they're quite terrifying, really. You got this high-speed, large bird which can essentially decapitate you, and they were very, very excellent hunters. Jonathan Harris, thank you. What is my favourite Viking story? Well, there's a story about a farm worker who nobody liked. It's a long story. It's basically a sort of a ghost story, or it's a story of a wight who was injustice was done upon him, and he was a really evil individual, but it didn't really justify them leaving him out in the cold, sort of thing. He was doing his job. He had been promised the farmer's daughter, and then he died, and then he came back and was demanding the farmer's daughter, and they said no, and he killed their livestock and stuff like that. And then eventually the farmer, or the property owner, disguised himself as the daughter and lay in bed and waited for this thing to come and grab him. And then this titanic battle ensued, and they eventually killed it. But as is the way with a lot of Viking ghost stories, as well as like Japanese ghost stories, they were tainted by the evil of this thing ever since, and their family was laid with a curse of darkness and depression, essentially. So yeah, touched by evil. So that's one of my favorites, mainly because of like the cleverness and the battle between the two, and the superhuman effort that the father goes to protect his children. But really, like, he's paying for his own dishonesty in a way, dealing with evil. He should never have dealt with evil in the first place, but he was desperate, right? Anyway, it's a long story. William Justin, thank you. Got it. Thanks, mate. I got their backstories to bring them into the table. Free will has free reign here. Appreciate it. Excellent. I think you're going to do absolutely fantastic, but let me know how it goes anyway. And I'm always keen to hear. Pyrite is an ore of gold and forms at high and low temperatures, so maybe a bipolar gold dragon type personality. Is pyrite a form of gold? Because you can't convert pyrite into gold chemically, can you? Can you? It's something else, right? It's found around gold deposits, like it's found in quartz, but it's not actually gold. It's fool's gold. False gold. Would aluminum be anything like mithril? Mithril is a form of silver. Electrum is a naturally forming alloy of gold and silver. And platinum is platinum. So mithril is like a very, very hard silver. Like it's a steel. It's silver steel, essentially. Mithril, I don't think mithril exists in the natural world in any way. It's a fantasy silver. What's happening to me a lot lately, Great Sage? I missed that. Wow, my chat keeps jumping. Bilbo Baggins, thank you. Long-time listener, love your channel. Long-time listener, first-time caller. Question, is there a time travel rule set that's ever officially been recognised by Wizards of the Coast? Ooh, I don't know if I would say Wizards of the Coast recognise it, but there is old skill rules on time travel, yes. I always suggest that time travel is very much dimensional travel. So you're not traveling backward and forward in successive actual time in the universe that you're in. You're traveling. The best way to handle it narratively, if you don't want to seriously hurt your campaign, is to travel to an alt universe that's quite similar to the one that you've just left behind in all regards, apart from the passage of time. So everything has happened in that universe a little bit earlier or a little bit later than what it did in the universe you just left behind. So in that alternate universe, there is an alternate version of the player characters existing there already. Or, if you really fine-tune the spell, you zip over into a universe where your character never existed. So it would be like, instead of being born, they just weren't, like they miscarried, or they, something happened to them in their childhood and they died. So the adult version of them doesn't exist in that universe, if you want to get it like really easy. So they could go back to an alternate version of their own universe and kill the grandparent of that character that never existed in that campaign. So they could kill the grandfather and still be fine, because it's not their grandfather. So that's the easiest way of dealing with it. But if you cross over into that universe, go back in time, grab an item from there, and then come forward into, cross back over into your universe where timing is back to normal, you've still got that item, but it may be a duplicate of an item that currently exists in the universe that you're from. So all of a sudden you might have two sections of the Rod of Seven Parts. Wow. What could possibly happen? What could possibly go wrong there? The Witches movie that recently came out got me wondering on how to turn a Roald Dahl witch into a D&D monster. Got any ideas? So those are more folklore type witches. Like, that's more of a fairy tale type witch, right? So it's not a supernatural monster creature. It's just like, it's got no toes and it's various things. So you could say that it's a specific type of warlock that has specific traits that they develop. Or it may actually be a little known race of sub-hags, you could say. The problem there is you're getting very close to being, like, at risk of using a very triggering word. It's problematic as fuck to use a Roald Dahl version of a witch in the thing, because it's culturally insensitive to people who are actually witches. Let's put it that way. I know a few witches, and it's okay using hags and stuff like that, and people in the world calling them witches, because they don't know any better, But when you're getting close towards, like, a religion that was actually seriously persecuted, it can be tricky. So tread carefully in that regard. It's perfectly fine for your home games and stuff like that, but don't pull anything like that at a convention, otherwise you're probably going to get some sort of outrage activist in your face screaming at you, and that's just bother that you don't need when it's so easily avoided. Yuptub, High Priest, thank you very much. Are dreams a form of psionics, and what does it mean for gods and other powerful beings and the world of D&D? So, I haven't really talked about it yet, but the Feywild is an echo plane, so is the Shadowfell is an echo plane, and the Realm of Dreams is also an echo plane. So it's different from the fairy tale and storytelling reality of imagination, which is the Feywild, which is actually interposing and mixing and stamping on the Feywild. Otherwise would be an area where it's like a universe where nature existed dialed to 11, and it's actually lethal to primaterial life. If you go over there, the plants and stuff there are sentient and will kill you because you're food to them. So the borders of the Feywild are the wildlands, which are actually highly dangerous to life. The realm of dreams and imagination and storytelling, and the Fey creatures, the Fey lords and archfey, have populated the Fey realm and created pockets, quite often mobile, that their existence alters the landscape and alters things. Like it's a regional effect that has a very long, well-established history. So the Fey courts of the Fey realm are that wide scale. So there's certain stamps of seasons and regions and territories and stereotypical fairy tale effects that are stamped onto the Feywild. So you could say that although the Feywild is technically boundless and infinite, once you go past the influence of the Archfey, you go into an area of the Feywild which is actually lethal and inimical to your form of life. It's the wildlands. So it's like you can escape into the borders, across the border, to get away from the Archfey that may be chasing you. But if you cross over into the wildlands, you better get out of there really quickly, because you can't even spend like a long rest there. You can't sleep there without being murdered by something. So yeah. The Realm of Dreams is it's you know, what happens if dreams are actually a reality that you step into. It's weird, it's morphic, it's changeable, it makes sense while you're there, but it makes no sense when you're not there. It's crazy. It follows its own narratives, and it's very, very weird. Like, dream creatures don't make a lot of sense to the reality that they come from. So the rules that are surrounding the individual regions of the dream sphere are just that. They're localized rules of physics and story. But we'll talk more about the dreamlands later on. It's a good question, though. So are dreams a form of psionics? Anything that involves the will and the imagination can be a form of psionics, you could say. If it influences the world around you, then essentially anything that's mental that affects the world around you is either a spell or psionics. In 5th edition, we don't really clearly define the difference between a spell and psionics as much as we did in previous editions. Mithril was invented by Tolkien, probably. It's probably based on something else in folklore. Platinum variant, Palladium dragon. Well, palladium is an element, sure. We could have uranium dragon, polonium, the transuranic dragons. Kaliak is a fairy tale witch. Oh, okay. For the orchard, thank you. What are the Shadowfell oceans like? Pretty much as you would imagine. It's a benthic plain of and like a coral graveyard. So it's, you know, nasty and dead looking, and black and dismal. And the things that float around there are not like anglerfish. They're ghosts, you know, that will eat your soul. Did I contradict myself? Maybe. I'm constantly learning as well, so my older videos I may actually contradict some of the things that I say about them. Just gotta, you know, it's a learning process. Have I ever played a D&D Hell Court? No, I don't think so. Oh, that's a good point, Lysander. Yeah. Thank you. When you do a video on the plane of dreams, can you include a chunk on the Quarry and the Kalishtar from the lore from Eberron? Yeah, because they're really like quite compelling. Can undead dream? Usually undead don't sleep, which is horrifying when you think about like a mummy being stuck in a sarcophagus. You would think that they would just go into a dreamless state where, I don't know, they're experiencing some subjective reality. I don't know. It's not pleasant being undead, people. It's not. In folklore, if one spends too much time in the Feywilds, you slowly become one. That could be a great effect instead of straight lethality. Yeah, true. Also, there's a chance, I think it's a 1 in 8 chance that, or it's like a 2 in 10 chance, that you, when you leave the Feywild, your body treats it like it was a dream. So there is that element of dream to it. So you don't remember exactly what happened. It's just a series of impressions, like you did actually dream being there. But it's very compelling and addictive, the Feywild. So there's quite often cases where people will try desperately to get back to the Feywild. There's also the problem with temporal hoogie-woogie as well. So time may pass very, very slowly or very, very quickly in the Feywild, and when you travel back to the prime material plane, it catches up with you. Tungsten Dragon, yeah. Well, the Weir Dragon, as I've pointed out many times, I've already covered the Weir Dragon. That's the Drow Dragon and the Song Dragon. So the Rare Dragon Breeds video and the Song Dragon video are Weir Dragons. Are there Shadowfell Ixalar Chittle? Probably, yeah. That'll be the vampire version of them. So maybe the vampires can cross over to the Shadowfell version of their oceans and dominate. Schools of skeletal fish. How do gods view dreams, and can they dream? Well, yeah. Like, for instance, the Feywild crosses over into Elysium and Bitopia and the Outlands and a number of other places where naturally occurring portals exist. You would expect that a high-level Fey could just cross over into the idyllic gardens of Elysium, for instance. Because Elysium is more than just like the Greek version of Elysium. It's a realm in and of itself. So yeah, and gods have the ability to cross over into people's dreams and imaginations as well. So a large chunk of what gods are is a amalgamation of different beliefs, right? And beliefs have a lot to do with dreams and imagination. I wouldn't say they're exactly the same. There's definite differences there. A vampire rests, yeah. It just lays there and thinks about blood, I suppose. Oh, that's okay, William. Too much Feywild and you become Fey-touched. Yeah, so, like, you know, you become Fey. And of course, if you stay on the Shadowfell too long, you get shadow touched. And I suppose if you stay in the Dream Realm too long, you become dream touched. Can you romance an Ixalar Chittle? No. It's a sentient manta ray, dude. Technically steel dragons too. That's a good question, AC. Would traveling to and staying in the Feywild be a viable way for a human druid to extend their lifespan? Probably. And, I mean, we're talking about the possible origin of some of the Archfey. So we don't really know where Titania and Oberon and those sort of individuals came from. Really. Do we need to? Like, in fairy tales, do we know what the origin of Baba Yaga or the Wicked Witch in the gingerbread cottage? Like, where does she come from? We don't know. They never talk about it. It's timeless. Oberon, for instance, has a particular hatred for time. He makes sure that everything within the autumn court, that used to be the spring court, is timeless. So time-keeping devices just don't work in his realm. Aboleth absolutely do dream. Yeah, they're living beings. Like in American Gods. Yeah, American Gods is really good, actually, for examining that sort of D&D look at faith. Because it is very D&D when you think about it. It's like, what happens when a god runs out of worshippers? I suppose gods can dream things into existence, but they can just will things into existence. Didn't Odin do that? Well, yeah. Odin's an interesting case of a self-sacrificing god that exchanged, like, his. There's that narrative thing of exchanging your eye for seeing the future, for instance. Like, if you press on your eyeball, don't do this at home, by the way. If you press on your eyeball, you get these phrenic shapes, which, like, geometric patterns and stuff like that appear. And there may have been some sort of a mythology to explain why those symbols and patterns and geometric shapes and stuff appear in your eyes. So the idea of, like, removing your eye and seeing those permanently, or understanding what those shapes mean, could be the origin of the whole, you know, Odin hanging himself from the world tree, stabbing himself and lying, hanging upside down for 9 days and 9 nights, and looking into the pool where he saw the runes, for instance. But that's Norse adoption of older Germanic myths and stuff like that. Don't drink anything in the Fae. You're probably going to get in trouble. Oh, you can moon ring. They're just not going to love you back. Your goldfish may be in love with you. It doesn't mean it's going to work. Do beholders dream of cyclopic sheep? They do now. Undead don't need to sleep or eat or breathe. Doesn't mean that they can't. True. Have I covered the Feydark? I talk a little bit about the Feydark in one of the podcasty things that Patreon members and Subscribestar members and YouTube paying customer members have access to at the moment. Eventually those will be released to everyone to listen to as well. And in that I read from the Codex of the Infinite Planes and talk about the Feydark and what the Feydark is. But there's much more information about, like, specific locations within the Feydark, specific properties of the Feydark, the fact that it's not actually that dark. You know, it's quite interesting. Oh, Damien, the thumbnail was mainly in relation to me sitting here for 2 hours. You'd need the endurance of a lich to do so. But there's mead. William, yeah, well, sacrifices eye for wisdom, the ability to see the arcane, for having 2 raven familiars, thought and memory, you know. Like, really, it's symbology. Like I say, don't get too hung up on the modern day mythology, because it was nowhere near as cemented and solidified and as clear-cut as it is now. And a lot of, like, particularly Norse mythology and things like that it's not scripture, it's not doctrine. They didn't have a holy book. They had stories and feelings, and, you know, you look at nature and you say, wow, that's epic. I feel there's a god there somewhere. Like, this place is holy for some reason. It speaks to something inside me. The little monkey bit in me went, ook, you know. Good example is Floki from Vikings, like the last series of Vikings, where he goes to a new land and he sees the gods there, and he feels a reverence for it. 173 in chat. Hello, everyone. Confirmed HJ's a lich. Many people have tried. In Basic Edition, the Fae broke off on the beginning, and the other group was the Immortals. Both are extremely powerful, but in different ways. Yeah, so like that's the path of our immortality, right? So the Feywild is on your way to the afterlife, but it's not actually the afterlife. It's an in-between place. It's an echo plane. It's a parallel dimension. It's a border plane between two places, but it's a location in and of itself. So I like to talk about the green path within the Feywild, which will take you to other realms of existence through the Feywild. So you use that ability of the Feywild to shift time and space, to actually travel between two different locations without traveling. Favorite food is Faerun. Yeah, the goldfish comment may haunt me. If I do a Feydark video, will you mention the Incanabulum? Probably. What's the future of your podcast? I don't know. This is the thing, Jesse. You tell me. Like I'm all about the interaction and being guided by what you want to hear from me. So I have things which I can talk about in the podcasts and carry on in the way I've been doing. But really what I need is feedback from everybody about what they want to hear. Because it's your time, it's your 20 or 30 minutes or so that I'm filling up with me talking. What do you want me to talk about? I'm quite happy to research anything you want and talk about it. It's kind of a podcast. It's still on YouTube. There are unlisted videos which are available to people who are Patreons and Subscribestar members and members of the YouTube channel. So that's paid subscribers of the YouTube channel. Can you spelljammer in the Feywild? There's no, as far as I know, there may be wild space, but there's no sphere in the Feywild. In fact, the stars that you see up in the sky are either powerful ascended radiant beings or portals to the far realm. we don't know which. Probably both. So the wild space of the Feywild would be very different, and all sorts of opportunities there for real crazy wackadoo stuff. You may like encounter space angels, for instance, or Fey realms that are up in the sky. And there may not actually be any limit to the sky. The oxygen-rich atmosphere may actually extend forever, because the Feywild is not Earth-like. But you should be able to fly around in a flying ship, yes. Because it's magic. Yeah, they're not exactly the same as my D&D lore videos. They're unscripted. So I'm just talking about, like, if I could show you. Things are falling apart. That was genuine shock and surprise. So this is like my 3 pages of notes for one of my podcasty episodes. They're just talking points. So stuff that I cover as I'm talking about the thing. So that's what my notes look like. Just bullet points and drop down menu type chart things. So yeah. Oh, I see. Don't put stuff on top of your printer. It has trapdoors. There we go. Thanks, Raikon JM. Come on, guys. Let's get some super chats going. Yeah, it's been a bit of a lull there. The podcasts are called nothing really. They're just episode 1, 2, 3, 4. I call them podcasty thing. because they're not really a podcast. It doesn't follow the same sort of format. Like, I have a little bit of music in the beginning, but I've just basically launched straight into it. The format of people, like two white dudes talking to each other, agreeing with each other about Dungeons and Dragons, is not really what I was aiming for this one. I do sort of podcasty things every now and then, like once or twice a year. And we had the podcast of Wonder, which sort of started up and then stopped with my friend Ian, which hopefully I'd like to continue at some future point. Greetings, AJ. Thank you, Malfazar. Prepping for a game tonight and racking tart cherry mead. Oh, nice. Racking. Is there any place for a male in Illustrat's religion, male drow or bard or cleric? Actually, William would probably be the one to answer that, because he knows a lot more about Illustrat's religion than I do. I drink and I know things. It's true. Finish the science fantasy illustration I mentioned in last weekend's stream. Is it okay to link or chat or tag or on Twitter? You're going to have difficulty with that, because anything that has got a link to it, or even an @ symbol in it, or even a dot something where you haven't got a space between the full stop and the next thing, gets caught by the comment filter. So it'll have to wait until I find it and then allow it into the comments. But you can go for it. Why is it that putting a portable hole inside a bag of holding creates a gate to the astral plane? My imp got rid of a Cybrius by doing that. It's just one of those things, like the astral plane is a transitive plane of where mind is more important than reality. Like it's mind over matter. So when you get rid of all the mind, when you get rid of all the matter, so it cancels itself out, so to speak. So you create a pocket plane within a pocket plane that goes, book, turns inside out and pops out into Weir. It's either going to be limbo or the astral plane or the ethereal plane, essentially. So I would say, me personally, I'd pop them into limbo, because that's where all the offcuts of reality go. Malfazar, thank you. Also have a pound of orange honey. What should I make? Mead, dude. You don't need anything other than honey to make mead. You need honey, you need yeast, and you need like some fruit peel or something like that, if you don't have any other mineral additive to provide additional nutrients for the mead. That's about it. Thanks, Bilbo. Follow-up. Could you use time travel to go around Mithras prohibition on higher than 10th level spells imposing after casters' folly? Yes. Depends, though, on what sort of time travel you're talking about. There's no reason why you can't go to the Feywild and create a portal that opens up back into the prime material plane, cast your above 10th level spell in the Feywild, but direct the result of that spell back into the prime material plane. And then you'd have Mithras, you'd have Mithras show up and be like, what do you think you're doing? It's like, we didn't use the weave. It's like, yeah, so you may get around it only to come across the fact that the god is actually watching. It's a little bit more complicated than a mechanical block. Rational redneck, I like it. Thank you. Here's my weekly donation. An usual gentle plea for a 5-minute video on my favourite winged cat, the Tressum. Keep up the good work. Okay, it's a winged cat. You know, they're not that complicated. That's okay, Epic Thulu. Don't worry, you can catch me later. Jonathan Harris, thank you. What reason Spellweavers invade the Dreamlands? I don't know. Like, I've got to talk about the Dreamlands later on. I haven't really researched a lot on the Dreamlands yet, so that's why I'm not talking about it much. I'm just alluding to the fact that I will be talking about it. At the moment, I'm just acknowledging that the Dreamlands exist. The Spellweavers are trying to stitch back together a super reality which no longer exists because the gods turned it into different planes of existence. We don't actually know whether in the Primaterial universe that exists now, it ever was like that. So the Spellweavers may actually be from an alternate plane of existence where things were quite different. One of those parallel dimensions that we're talking about. So they may be from somewhere completely different, that when their universe got torn apart, they got thrown out of time and space. We don't know. Or they could just be crazy. It may never have existed the way they thought it did. Came across the Evangian, and while I know it's Dark Sun and you typically stick to Forgotten Realms, there's no YouTube videos on this monster. Who better to have the first real lore video on it? Somebody else. Yeah. I don't know. I played a little bit of Dark Sun. It's quite often featured as like a spot location that we've travelled to. I've had characters who are Thri-Kreen, usually. It's involvement of the Thri-Kreen. But whenever we deal with like that sort of... what's another world? Oh, Numenera was like a sort of a Dark Sun setting for me as well, because we travel through a desert region. But I've never actually played Dark Sun as a campaign proper. Mainly because I've never had anybody who actually would run it like by the book. It's always very heavily homebrewed, or it's a component that's thrown into something else. So yeah, I guess that's why I haven't done a lot of videos on specific lore from it, because I quite often view Dark Sun as just like, yeah, it's part of the, like, it's an homage to part of the origin of Dungeons and Dragons as a rule set and a way of thinking, narrative way of thinking. But as an actual setting itself, I don't know if I could run it and do it justice. It's got that sort of Mad Max vibe to it. Yeah. Also a bit of Fafnir and Mouser. But yeah. Good night, Danska. Hey Frederick, my day's going well, thank you. I'm drinking some mead in the midday. It's too damn hot inside though. Afterwards I'm going to be going and having a cool shower and then standing in front of a fan for a while. I'm such a wuss when it comes to hot temperatures. I should go and live in the Arctic Circle. Antarctica. Free real estate. More and more melting every day. Oh, there we go. William, thank you. When Illustre slew Varian, she took his night shadows as her own. Waiting for an update since she has resurrected. I'm homebrewing from there. Nice. Yeah, so it's still in progress. Like, the Drow Pantheon is very much active and on the go. Yeah, do a 10-second video on a Tressum. This is a cat. This is a cat with wings. There you go. Tressum. Just like get a cat, throw it up into a hammock off screen, Photoshop some wings on it, make distressed bird noises. The podcast doesn't have a name. It's just the podcasty thing. AJ's broadcasts. Unscripted broadcasts. How's that? Why don't we come up with a name for the podcast and start calling it a podcast? I don't know. It's like, it's not a podcast because it's not on the podcast thing. Like, podcast is actually a medium. It's like, YouTube or Twitch or something. But it's not a podcast because it's on YouTube. It's not on any other medium. It's not even on SoundCloud. So it's not really a podcast per se. It's just a podcast style thing because I'm talking into a microphone unscripted about a topic. If the weave doesn't exist in the Feywild, how do wizards cast spells there? Same way they cast spells in Athos or Greyhawk or any of the other regions. There's no weave in Greyhawk either. How do wizards cast spells there? my friend Ian talks about the Akashic being the background of will, that gods exist in as a medium, and people can cast spells by manipulating the Akashic or the Akasa. But the weave is an artificial construct within Faerun that is there to stop spellcasters from disrupting the natural world. So essentially it's a power management system that ensures that the necessary flow of energy from A to B is not interrupted by wizards drawing too much power from it. Otherwise you end up with Athos, where spellcasting drains the natural world of vitality. And there must be something else which exists within the world of Greyhawk, because casting magical spells doesn't really have any effect, as far as I can tell, on the environment. Correct me if I'm wrong. Robert, thank you. Can a wish spell be used to make a devil remember its mortal's life? What would happen if the devil was forced to remember what it used to be? Nothing, because they used to be lawful evil. So they'd be like, I was so naive, but I was on the right track. I approve. It's not like they started off good. Or maybe they did, but they were lawful evil by the end of it. But yeah, I mean, the principle's sound. You could certainly cast Wish to make them go, ugh, for a while and distract them in combat and stuff. It's a pretty heavy-handed way of doing it, but it might work. Hey, Rational Reader, thank you. If the weave doesn't exist in the Feywild... Oh, yeah, I already answered that one. A coin for the Dire Hobbit. Thank you, sir. Next time, I'm going to super chill my room before this starts, because it's getting real hot. And the mead certainly doesn't help, because it warms you up quite a lot. Thank you, Demon Inquisition. So, in Volo's guide on page 45, it reads, when hobgoblins aren't waging war, they farm, they build. They farm? That seems like a departure from what I've heard as well. Mostly only about taking other creatures' things. Yeah, hobgoblins don't farm. They don't farm. They're not agricultural. They're not agrarian at all. That's straight up bullshit. Volo is quite often wrong, okay? Don't take that as gospel. Hobgoblins don't farm. They get other creatures to farm for them. But like, they're vegetable intolerant for the most part. They have a mostly meat diet, so they don't need to farm in that way. They mostly hunt. Yeah, very much on the wrong side of the world. You had an idea for Spellweaver golems that fell apart after using all their spells. That's a good idea. Yeah, like a golem that's got a set amount of magical power that holds it together, like a power source, but it can channel that as spells and deplete its power source. It needs to be charged back up again. I also like the idea of golems that are tied to a magical crystal or a font of magical power, and if they travel too far away from it, they run out of steam and fall apart. So that means you can run away from the golem and they stop after a certain point, like a dog on a leash. So my warlock's befriended imp just shoved 2 snakes in his pack. They are sneaking through a swamp. Any ideas? 6 pound orange honey, orange zest, 71 pounds. Is that a recipe? You shifted tack real fast here, Melfazar. Just shoved 2 snakes in his pack. Yeah, that seems pretty par for the course. Well, I guess he's going to discover that at some point. I mean, maybe he gets immersed in the water at some point and the snakes drown, and he discovers them after the effect. It's like, why are there 2 snakes in my backpack? And the imp's like, I don't know. AJ's podcasty thing is the name of it. Yeah, okay. No, Moonring, I'm not calling it that. Ian's channel is called Red NZ Blue. Red NZ Blue. Or NZ Blue. It's linked at the end of every single one of my videos. You've never even played D&D? Well, it's about time you tried. Writer, do not ever put your phone number or email address as a comment in a live stream. What is wrong with you? Just contact each other on Facebook and message each other. Worlds without the weave. That's a good one. Thanks, Freydnort. Worlds without the weave probably have high background magic levels leaking in from somewhere, like the Feywild or the Far Realm. I like that, yeah. So every time you cast magic in Greyhawk, for instance, you're actually drawing on other planes of existence. I love that, because that gives a fundamental reason why these supernatural forces would have an influence, a growing influence on that plane of existence, because more and more of their energy is leaking into that world. So it's naturalizing the weirdness, the spookiness. So the world, the more casting of magic from the Fae or the Shadowfell, the more those energies are trying to stabilize within that place. So eventually, if, say, too much Far Realm energy was pumped into there through weird transmutations, for instance, you may get spontaneous portals to the Far Realm opening where those magical energies are coalescing. And it's not really of much interest to a wizard whose vested interest is in power and gaining personal power and stuff, what the long-term effects of those magical energies would be. In fact, how would they even study them? You know? It may be so subtle. How bright does the emanation of Far Realm energy have to be before it's noticeable every single time you cast Detect Magic? Are you a dire hobbit or a pygmy giant? I am a dire hobbit, thank you very much, and I have the vegetables to prove it. Making a good green dragon that merged with the forest. Yeah. Subtly manipulates people into what it thinks is best for them. Any ideas? It sounds like you're on the right track there, Michael. Yeah, that's quite reasonable. Remember, any intelligent being, even though the Monster Manual says they're predominantly this alignment, any intelligent being with an IQ over, say, like 6 or 7 or so, has the ability to be any alignment, technically. Some creatures, of course, are influenced by their plane of existence as well. Like any being that's from the Nine Hells has a strong influence of lawful evil over them because of the plane existence itself. It's like trying to do winter sports in the Bahamas. It's not naturally conducive to snow in the Bahamas. So it's not naturally conducive to being chaotic good in the plains of the Nine Hells. Your attitude is going to melt under the relentless heat of lawful evil. Me and Carl Urban are the same person. No, I can assure you, I do not have his hair at all. But if they ever need somebody in one of their Judge Dredd movies, I'm absolutely in for that. Den of the Die Hobbit. Yep, this is pretty much the Den of a Die Hobbit. What you don't see, of course, is all the cheese and the salami and stuff in my larder. Hey, East Coast Nerd Society. Do I like grimdark or low magic games? If you do, what are your favourite aspects of them? If I'm going to play a low magic game, I don't use Dungeons and Dragons per se. I'll use some other system like low fantasy gaming or Fantasy Age is really good for that. Some of the like old school, like Osric or something like that, you could do a low fantasy gaming type thing in that as well, like more sort of medieval setting. But I find those games kind of boring. I like magic and including magic in my game. Death Cheese Knowledge. That is a good name for a podcast. It's a burner phone. Yeah, no, but still, I don't want to establish the precedent. Pale Rider. No offense, dude. Those comments get held for a reason. People posting their numbers. Anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, low fantasy gaming. That sort of thing. My games, when I run them, are typically quite funny, like slapstick. I play a lot for the comedy. So my characters are. I like role playing and doing voices and stuff because it's fun. I like cutting back and just everybody having a good laugh during the game. And I don't think I could run a really, really, really serious campaign for a long, long time without throwing in a joke here and there. Like even in my videos, I try to cut the humor back as much as possible, but I still throw jokes in there. You know this. No, I've never played in the Pelennor setting. Earthbound Dragon. Dagain. Oh, the comment got held, William, because he included personal details in there. And like I say, if you try and put an email address or a website link or like a phone number or something like that in the thing, it'll stop it. Probably not phone numbers, but don't put your phone number in the public chat. Russia is watching. No, I am not a mutant manta ray. Definitely do eat your vegetables. I ate a fresh carrot from my garden yesterday. It was delicious. Yak Folk for Overlord 2020. 2021. 2020 is pretty much over. Twilight 2000. Very good game system. Never actually played it. Know a fair bit about it. Can I do a Genius Loci video? Maybe. What type of bards would the Beatles be? So they were quite roguish. They definitely bucked authority. They were quite popular with the youngsters. It really depends on what part of their career you're talking about, because they diverged quite a bit. Like towards the end there, John Lennon was more of an artist than a bard. I don't know. Tricky. They'd each be different, really. Paul McCartney. He's pretty much stayed the same. Tricky question. That's a good question, Kick-Ass Duke. What do New Zealanders do for Halloween? First of all, it's spring here, going into summer. It's not the same time of year. We don't have, pumpkins. We don't have falling leaves. It's not like the start of winter storms and things like that. It's getting progressively hot. Like last night, it was about 17 degrees all night. I'm sweating right now. The idea of dressing up in a costume right now that is not like a singlet and shorts is like, no, thank you. It's not a tradition that we brought with us as colonists from elsewhere, so we don't do this in the middle of winter, even so. So it's something that's entirely influenced by our television and things like that we get from the States. That being said, New Zealanders very much are keen on the idea of dressing up as adults and getting shit-faced drunk. That's always been a heavy part of like what Halloween is about. So for Kiwis, it's mostly something that you do as a young adult when you're at like university or something like that, when you've just moved out of home. Like in your mid-20s and stuff, you get dressed up and you go to a Halloween type party. We do dress-up parties just for fun anyway. It doesn't matter what time of year it is. Or like somebody's having a birthday party and say we're gonna do a dress up. We're gonna do a fancy dress party, and everybody gets dressed up and they go to a party. We don't need an excuse of some foreign thing. So we're not Europeans and we're not Americans. we don't celebrate the same traditions and stuff because our year is completely around the other way. Our seasons are reversed, so it doesn't make any sense. So we have summer, Christmas in summer, for instance. Like it's hot summer when we have Christmas. So sitting down and having like steaming pudding and like hot roast ham and stuff is just like, no thanks. I'll have it later as a cold roast sandwich. So yeah, Halloween is quite different. Trick or treating. Most people these days have kind of lost sight of what the whole trick part of trick or treating was in the first place. In New Zealand, it's sort of gained a little bit of traction prior to COVID-19 with people putting like a balloon on their letterbox indicating that it's okay, they're participating in the trick or treat thing, so they will have lollies and stuff available, sweets for kids who show up with the adult to trick or treat at their door. But people don't go to people's doors unless they've got some indication that they're taking part, because we have a lot of different people from a lot of different cultures in New Zealand, and some of them don't even know what the hell that is. So like if you show up with your kid dressed in costumes at their door, and they'll like open it up and be like, close the door in your face, because they just don't know what you're doing. So yeah, it just hasn't really taken off so much. So you may have like a cul-de-sac community of people who are different young families, and they'll all participate, and the kids will run around to those different houses and get sweets and stuff, and they'll get the experience of trick or treat that they see on television without putting them at any significant risk or anything like that, or bothering people who are not participating in this strange European holiday. Do we have mummers? No. Low fantasy. Ninjas and super spies. Oh, dude, Beyond the Supernatural is low fantasy. Far out. That's one of my favourite SDC settings for Palladium. But we'll be talking about that in November. Do Kiwis Halloween? No, not really. Lamentations of the Flame Princess is one of the better OSR type titles. It's got an unfair like reputation for being adult, I suppose you could say. I've found the community of Lamentations of the Flame Princess is one of the more reasonable, quiet, friendly, welcoming, and content-oriented communities that we have on Facebook, for instance. It's not entirely what the impression outside of the community is actually like. Like, if you ignore the whole Twitter thing, the actual game itself and the people that play it are pretty cool. How do you make a psionic druid? Well, in older editions, you would be a druid, and then psychic would be something that you would add on to that. You don't necessarily have to be a psychic character class to have psychic powers. That's one of the tricky things about D&D. It's like, what if you're born with psychic powers, but you want to be a fighter? You don't have to be a psi sword, you know. So you could have it like your character has got a couple of cantrips that are psychic abilities that they use, but they're still just a druid. Good question though, Jonathan. Thanks, Peter. I have a hard time remembering that I want my campaign setting to be post-apocalyptic and semi-science fantasy. Any advice for not falling into generic Fantasyland tropes? Remove automatic access to class powers. That's specifically important for magic users. So if you have stated clearly from the outset, there are no wizard academies. Like, you have to learn your powers from another wizard or spellcaster, and they are few and far between, and they don't accept students lightly because they are highly competitive and they're persecuted for what they do. So all of a sudden, instead of like you level up and you gain these spells, now you level up, you've got the capacity to cast those spells, but you haven't got access to them yet until you actually go adventuring and find them. that discourages people from playing those magic using classes. So it advances that whole post-apocalyptic scarcity. And it makes it much more appealing to be a class that has ready access to its abilities like fighters and rogues and bards and things like that. And rangers and things. Like, you can play a bard character that doesn't have access to magic. Same thing with a ranger. You can even be a druid character that doesn't have access to magic. You may be able to just like shapeshift into an animal and have those sort of class abilities, but you can't cast nature spells, for instance. It's harsh, but that's the whole idea behind those settings. Frederick, that is a perfect summation of it exactly, yep. The only reason New Zealand has Halloween is to allow the retail stores to sell more, and it's an excuse to drink in New Zealand, which we don't need much of an excuse to drink in New Zealand. It has been said. Yes, indeed. Much like the people native to the Arctic Circle have many words for snow, we have many words for being drunk. 3 sheets to the wind. Tired. What was it? Tired and confused? No, tired and something. Shit-faced. Po-faced. Bent. Wasted. Munted is a great one. Dude was munted. 17 degrees is what? 80? Yeah, something like that. I don't know. I don't speak your sorcery. Graffiti the neighbour's sheep. Why would you do this? No, you do not graffiti a sheep. I've heard New Zealand has a big motor club culture. You said you owned a bike ride, AJ. I had a scooter. No, I'm not a motorbike rider or a motor vehicle enthusiast. I'm very much the wrong person to ask about that. It's actually fairly common amongst my friends to not have cars. More people I know don't have cars than do have them amongst my circle of friends back in the city that I lived in. I think it's perfectly reasonable to live in a city and not drive a vehicle. That should be more common than not, really, when you think about it. Marvel Universe and DC Comic RPG, yeah. Villains and Vigilantes, Mutants and Masterminds, the Marvel RPG. Yeah, Twitter is good for certain things, it's terrible for other things. Really, you're at the architect of your own doom if you engage with Twitter too much along a certain train. Like, once you get into the whole... like, you should talk about what you're doing, show artwork and things like that. Like, you know, I like to go through my Twitter feed and see interesting products and artwork that people have been doing and like photos of their garden and stuff like that. I like to take a view into their world, not just their opinion on some news article or something like that. It's boring. Like, if I want an opinion on a news article, I'll go to the news article and I'll form my own opinion. Thank you very much. I don't use Twitter as a hug bubble. You're more likely to get beaten on Cinco de Mayo, New Year's, or after your local NFL team wins or loses. Yeah. Snookered. I like it. Can mind flayers drink beer? Nah. They can try. They can attempt to drink it, yeah, but their digestive system is rudimentary at best. Why did I start doing D&D lore videos? Because people asked me to, essentially. What I was doing was a crafting channel, which is why it's called the Mighty Glue Stick. Literally, glue stick. But then I started talking about the lore behind the creatures that I was sculpting. And I still do sculptures and stuff. It just took off from there. Being on disability kind of puts you in the stat block of non-driving. Yeah. I don't drive by choice. Bikies. Bikies. Tunnels and Trolls. I've actually got Tunnels and Trolls. Where is it? Where are you? Tunnels and Trolls. I have got to organise my bookshelf. Mythology and my squeaky chair. Well, rest assured it's up here somewhere. Including... Whoa! Where did I leave it? Dun, dun, dun. Some classic old books in here. Oh, there it is. You beauty. Tunnels and Trolls. Classic. Oh, the nostalgia. I loved Tunnels and Trolls. This was back when I first got D&D Basic, and I couldn't find anything else to run D&D Basic, but I wanted to carry on with the sort of the solo play. So you can play Tunnels and Trolls by yourself. You can actually randomly generate the entire adventure if you want to, or you can run adventures for your friends. But it's possible to create the adventure and actually run it yourself with your own character, like a choose your own adventure book. Hey, Zachary. Jonathan, good question. I typically take ages to do the class videos. So the big video that I did on all the different faiths of the Forgotten Realms was like a venture in towards talking about the Cleric as a player character class. So yeah, Cleric will probably be the next one that I talk about. And that will be in my sweet time. Thanks, Jacob. Holy crap, we're almost at the 2-hour mark. Jacob, thank you. What do you know about the Moonshae Isles? A lot. In fact, I've got the latest supplement. Oh, it's somewhere on my shelf again. I've got the latest supplement for the Moonshae Isles. Boo. I was just reading it recently, so it's probably towards the end of one of my shelves. The interesting thing about the Moonshae Isles is that they have Lachey, who is still living there. It's very much got a Fey influence, heavily Fey influence over the whole place. So it's kind of like you're almost stepping into the Shadowfell in some areas. And yet it butts up against, it's a port of call for people from the Sword Coast and the Northmen, the ancient Luskan culture, is part of the Moonshae Isles as well. So it's an interesting setting. It's got a lot going on, and it's a very magical place. It's a magical place. Tips for running underwater combat is keep in mind that it's 3D. It's a 3-dimensional. You don't have to worry about falling and stuff and underwater stuff. And that sound travels particularly quickly underwater and for a longer distance. So it's a lot easier to hear things underwater, which is something that people quite often forget. But for anybody who's been a scuba diver like me, it makes a big difference. You can hear things a lot further away. Old paper smell better than new car smell, yeah. My favorite class and subclass, I do quite like warlocks and just straight up wizards. And subclass, I guess Pact of like Infernal Pacts and stuff is fun. And I think Overall, though, through the history of D&D and my current character in particular, I really like clerics because the huge range of different subtle differences you can bring to your character as a cleric of a specific pantheon, a specific god, their personal attitudes towards it and stuff, and just the diversity that you can have as a cleric. Title for the streams: AJ's Sage Advice. Well, I wanted to say Sage Advice, but like it's sort of been taken by Wizards of the Coast, and I don't really want to step on their algorithmic shoes, so to speak, algorithmic toes. James Greenan, things that I love about Australia. 1, it's not here. 2, the people. 3, the fruit. The fruit is absolutely amazing in Australia. I cast pod. I like it. That's a great name for a podcast. Stream of Sageousness. Sagacious AJ. Oh, Jonathan, that would actually work if everybody started super chatting. I wouldn't be able to leave until I'd answered them all. That is true. That is how you would keep my live chat going. Do I have any thoughts about working the paths to immortality into Forgotten Realms? I think it should always be an option. Like, just because it's not necessarily written into Forgotten Realms that there are guaranteed paths to immortality, doesn't mean you can't introduce them from any other game setting you want. I really like that idea. Like, if religion had if you had like the Scientology version of a pantheon or a religion, where they had, okay, if you follow these steps, you absolutely will get to a point where you are invited into the seven heavens, or something like that. So these are absolutely guaranteed steps to the pathway to immortality. Who wouldn't sign up? And you could say that a lot of the cults of the Forgotten Realms are pathways to immortality, like serve a demon lord, serve an infernal lord of the nine hells, and they will give you hundreds of years of life. How do you handle cleric spells in a world with no gods? Essentially have fundamental aspects of nature that people recognize and believe in. So it doesn't necessarily have to be personified by a god, but it would have to tie into something like a principle or a elemental force. So you could be a cleric of lightning. You could be a cleric of the coming storm. You could be a cleric of things in the darkness. So it's stuff that get you like your imagination going. It's stuff that the primitive people would be like, ah! Like the light is flashing from the sky and the thunder is rolling, and it's like we don't know what it is. The Candlekeep lectures. Things I love about Australia: the Men at Work song, Mad Max, and Hollow Knight. Hollow Knight is really funny. And Slackworm is Australian as well, I believe. Candlekeep Order of Librarians Militant. What do Ixazar Chittle's souls become when they die? They become fish fingers, crumbed fish fingers. Same. Well, like quite a few of them would go to the abyss, really, because Demigorgon. Any tips on world building? Lots of tips on world building. Yeah. Well, starting off with a single city and working on just what the characters know about the world around them is a great way to start world building. In fact, starting small and then working up to big is an excellent way to handle world building without overloading your characters with your players with expositions about the world that they don't necessarily need to know straight up. So they know, like if you start off in the city of Rockhold, for instance, they'll know who the local leaders are, who the local guild masters are, what the sort of career prospects they have are, if they're living just in that city and they don't plan on traveling anywhere. That, you know, they may hear about places elsewhere where they can get up their skills in their chosen character class. Like if you want to be a top level fighter, then you need to travel. The accepted way in Rockhold is to travel with this caravan and then go to the mercenary guild, which is located in this other city, and then they will up your skills in their training ludus there. But you have to qualify by passing the trials, you know. So you build the world that way by, like, all of a sudden you've got another city over here that's got a ludus, that's got a well-known mercenary guild. Why is it located there? Why are the mercenaries there rather than here? Well, maybe that's a trade route. Maybe that's a harbour. Maybe it's a place where famous battles took place. You know, you build it incrementally. The landmarks have to do with that as well. So why is that statue there? Why is this stone pillar there? Why was this big building put there? It could be a natural formation or a landmark, like a rise in the landscape that something was built on. It could be a fortification from an ancient militant past to the city. Yeah, all sorts of things. A storm is coming. I am the storm. You do need to get back into D&D. What's the stats for demonic fish sticks? Well, it obviously involves a constitution saving throw. You don't need to season them, which is great, because they're already pretty spicy. Jonathan Harris, thank you. Heroes of Faerun video. Possibly. I do have the Book of Heroes. I may have a look at that at some point. Give you the stats for Dristu Eden, for instance. Meanwhile, it's time for me to go, everybody. We have reached the end of the 2-hour chat. Well, I've done a whole episode on Thay. And Rashomon, fish fingers eat you. Nice. Oh, Evan, you missed a 2-hour live stream. Oh, well. Catch later, everybody. I'll be back again next weekend with more questions and answers. Stay tuned for more videos this week, including the epic Halloween homebrew monster video that I do every year. And I'm going to go and enjoy my mead and get cool because I'm sweating. All right. See you later.